We'll invest $40 million over 6 years to build a new wellness centre.
Tonight, the Prime Minister announces wellness help for the James Smith Cree Nation.
I've fallen down, I've made mistakes. However, mistakes have been my teachers, and I have learned from those mistakes.
An Abenaki woman, Michelle Obonsawin, is sworn in as Canada's first Indigenous Supreme Court Justice.
Cocaine. Cocaine and its metabolic byproduct was found in every single sample.
Testing the waters, the surprising results of a study by a First Nation in British Columbia. Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Savannah Kelly. The Prime Minister and Minister of Indigenous Services were on the James Smith Cree Nation in central Saskatchewan today. It's been almost 3 months since the mass stabbings that saw 10 people in the community and 1 more in the nearby town of Weldon. The Prime Minister made an announcement about how his government plans to put better mental health supports in place for those impacted by the tragic attacks.
All members of our communities should have access to the type of support they need. So today, we're taking action to improve access to care for the people of James Smith Cree Nation. We'll invest $40 million over 6 years to build a new wellness centre here in the community and to repurpose the existing Saquatamo Lodge to address immediate needs.
The Supreme Court of Canada officially welcomed Michelle Obonsawin today. She's a member of the Abenaki community of Odanak, and she becomes the first Indigenous person to sit on Canada's highest bench. Here's Annette Francis with more from this morning's ceremony in Ottawa.
And with the signing of the ceremonial rulebook, Justice Obonsawin took her seat on the Supreme Court of Canada bench. Chief Justice Richard Wagner made the opening remarks.
You mentioned during the Parliamentary Committee's question and answer session that a high school guidance teacher once told you that a legal career would be out of your reach. You responded, "You just watch me." I hope your story of persisting in the face of doubt will encourage students listening to today's ceremony to follow their dreams also. And like you, I hope they put their talents towards helping others and making this great country even better.
Today's ceremony brought together members of the court, family, and friends. The treasurer of the Law Society of Ontario said Obonsawin's lived experiences will enhance the quality of justice and public confidence.
And as you take on this appointment, we are also reminded that you come to us as a Francophone, a woman, and an Indigenous person. It is the depth of these diverse lived experiences that makes your appointment so meaningful, and so meaningful to many. The spectrum of experience on the bench of our highest court is deeply important.
Obonsawin offered some advice to youth.
I've fallen down, I've made mistakes. However, mistakes have been my teachers, and I have learned from those mistakes. I have always gotten up and continued, at times with trepidation, but always moving forward. Our actions are reflections of ourselves. We must be proud of who we are and of our uniqueness. I have a lot of people to thank. I did not get to this court on my own.
She had to hold back tears when she thanked her biggest supporter along her journey, her husband, Pierre.
I'm sorry, for those who don't know, I'm very emotional. I was charmed by him from the very first moments. He's always been my biggest fan and my strongest force.
Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
A Mi'kmaq family whose loved one died unexpectedly while in care is looking towards the courts in search of accountability. The family of Bridget Annie Denny has hired a lawyer to help. Danny, 65, of the Eskasoni First Nation, was a mother of 5 and had 15 grandchildren. She unexpectedly died in January 2021 while in care at the Cape Breton Regional Hospital. She was admitted the night before for complications due to diabetes. Lawyer Alyssa Lombard of the El Sibuktuk First Nation is examining legal options for the family. A recent provincial investigation found that the hospital failed to provide adequate care, and the Nova Scotia College of Physicians and Surgeons is conducting an internal review.
It's an important case if it's anyone that's going without in that kind of vulnerable circumstance. But when we look at an elder, a residential school survivor, and also a fluent speaker of the Mi'kmaq language, who was very clearly a matriarch in her family, it then no longer becomes a question of choice. It's a question of obligation and responsibility.
We need to take a short break. Coming up, a study by a First Nation in BC examining the local river system has turned up some unexpected results. It was 1 year ago that BC saw the worst flooding ever as numerous atmospheric rivers pounded the south coast with torrential rain. Now, a new study conducted by the Sumas First Nation about the contaminants of that floodwater is raising some eyebrows. APTN's Tina House has this story.
This is what the Whatcom exit off Highway 1 just outside of Abbotsford, BC looks like today. But 1 year ago, this is what it looked like, completely underwater. The Sumas Valley was once the great Sumas Lake before it was drained and became one of the most fertile lands in all of BC. And when the storms hit, the water rose to 10 feet in some places. Large-scale rescue operations took place to save farm animals and properties. The Army was eventually brought in to prep for surging waters in many First Nations communities.
Our backyards were flooded and we didn't have hardly any support. Like, it was very scary and hard and stressful.
This new report, commissioned by the Sumas First Nation, called A Lake Reemerges, Analysis of Contaminants in the Sumas Lake region, revealed some very surprising results of what was in those waters.
Guess what pharmaceutical and personal care product was found in every single sample we looked at? Cocaine. Cocaine and its metabolic byproduct was found in every single sample. Low concentrations, but found everywhere. Does raise another question about our activities in and around fish habitat. We looked at over 135 different pharmaceuticals, and we found veterinary drugs, we found antibiotics, we found painkillers, we found diabetes and asthma medication. We found an awful lot of things that, from an idealist perspective, should not be in fish habitat.
For Chief Dalton Silver of the Sumas First Nation, the results were shocking.
In a short period of time, we've seen what our people can call destruction of the homelands. And it's something that needs to change. And I think the report given today is evidence that we do need to change how we do things.
Charlene Ned lives here on the Sumas First Nation. She is also quite taken aback that cocaine was found in the samples.
I didn't know it could get in the water, and how does it get in the water? And it's through the wastes, our waste, all the waste that goes in the water.
Does it make you concerned to consume the fish that are going to be running through these waters again next season?
Yes.
And although the floodwaters have now dissipated, what exactly is the lasting effects of those contaminants?
All of these surface waters, if they don't drain into the Fraser, are percolating into the groundwater. The groundwater in the Fraser Valley is a source of drinking water for the city of Abbotsford in part, and many other communities. There are chemicals that we detected at low concentrations right now, but we detected them nonetheless in groundwater, which means these surface waters that are contaminated are getting into our drinking water supply.
Tina House, APTN National News, Abbotsford.
A newly revamped sawmill co-owned by a Cree First Nation in Quebec is aiming to be a cut above the rest. Located near Waswanipi, about 700 kilometers north of Montreal, it will create jobs, and its lumber will be used to address the housing shortage in the Cree Nation. But as Tom Fenario reports, not everyone loves the idea of increasing forestry in the area.
Iuiski, that's what the Cree in Quebec call their ancestral territory. It translates as the people's land. And for as long as the Cree can remember, the land has provided for them.
So I declare this bill revamped. Thank you.
Today is a big day for Paul Gull. As the chairman of the board, he's inaugurating the Cree Lumber Sawmill. Located near the Cree First Nation of Waswanipi, the mill was originally opened in 1997, but has laid dormant for 10 years. Now, thanks to a $20 million facelift, it's ready to reopen.
So that our people can work just like everybody else, and we will have an economic base that meets the needs of our people and meets the needs of our housing.
The mill is a collaboration with the Cree-owned Mistuk Corporation and another local non-Indigenous company, Chantier Chibougamau. The money comes from various provincial and federal funding bodies as well as the Cree Nation government.
I think it showcases to the world on an international level the success you can have when working in collaboration with First Nations.
The Cree Nation intends to use the sawmill's lumber to address the lack of housing in the 9 Cree communities of Iuiski. It's estimated that over 5,000 new family homes will need to be built in the next 15 years to address the shortage. The sawmill will create 30 full-time jobs and will provide time off to workers during the goose and moose hunting seasons. But opponents of the project say there isn't much moose to hunt anymore, and forestry isn't helping.
I haven't been killing a moose since about 6 or 7 years, and I used to get one every year, so I don't bother go looking for the moose.
Paul Dixon is the former director of the Waswanipi Cree Trappers Association. He says that decades ago his family could hunt 5 to 6 moose in a season.
I think in the past 3 years I only saw one moose, and that was like I was telling you about 4 months ago on a highway.
In October, the Cree Nation government and Quebec agreed to put a halt to moose sport hunting in the area surrounding Waswanipi due to the declining moose population.
One of the priorities for Cree Nation is to ensure that our development is not only beneficial to creating employment in the territory, but also respectful of the Cree way of life.
The Cree Nation and Mistook Corporation say that tallymen, the title given to the people who take care of their family trap lines, will be consulted about when and where they can cut lumber.
The reality now is we have to give something back to the youth, because we're not all going to be hunters, fishers, and trappers. We can't fit in there. We can't all go back. But we can have something that can sustain our community. Sustaining our community for future generations.
Almost a whole community, over close to 2,000, used to trap lines. So we're not all going to be sawmill workers, put it that way. I can have that argument too. Hey, we can't be all sawmill workers.
The Cree lumber mill is currently hiring and expects to be fully operational by early 2023. Tom Fenario, APTN National News, near Waswanipi Cree First Nation, Quebec.
The Métis Nation Saskatchewan is rejecting the Saskatchewan First Act proposed by Premier Scott Moe. The act would give the provincial government exclusive jurisdiction over natural resources. Tracy Leclerc is vice president of the MNS. She spoke to Daryl Stranger earlier.
Michelle, thanks so much for joining us today. What is it about the Saskatchewan First Act that the MNS so strongly objects to?
Well, the Saskatchewan First Act, as you're probably aware, deals with lands and resources. And really it's saying Saskatchewan has all rights to lands, resources, and those sorts of things. Doesn't mention Métis Nation or any First Nation in Saskatchewan around our inherent right our inherent rights under Section 35. Obviously, we've been on that land since long before Confederation. Saskatchewan entered Confederation and have, we practice our harvesting rights, all of those sorts of things. We have a land claim in Northwest Saskatchewan that is still unresolved. So we wholly object to the entire Saskatchewan Act.
Now, your membership weighed in recently as well, right? So what was the result of that?
Well, our Legislative Assembly, which is made up of our presidents, community presidents, we had the Legislative Assembly over the weekend, and they wholly rejected through a resolution both the Saskatchewan First Act, as well as something connected to that is the sale of Crown lands, because that's also impacting our Section 35 rights in Saskatchewan.
Now, Michelle, with similar legislation being proposed in Alberta, do you think there's a move now to limit inherent Indigenous rights?
Absolutely. And there has been in Saskatchewan, especially with Métis people and with First Nations people. I was reading an article the other day where, that community's rights were being infringed upon around the whole issue of duty to consult. Saskatchewan is one of the only provinces in Canada that doesn't respect Indigenous Section 35 rights around duty to consult, harvesting, you name it. So I think that there's going to be a pushback both in Saskatchewan by Indigenous people as well as in Alberta.
And lastly, before we let you go, Michelle, what are your next steps and the MNS's next steps as well?
So our next steps are we have the Saskatchewan Act into our legal councils, starting to really dig deep into whether or not it's constitutional. I mean, it obviously infringes upon our constitutional rights, but is it constitutional? I guess I would go back to the issue around when Quebec looked at separating, there was a constitutional question that went to the Supreme Court. So we're looking at the constitutionality of the Sask First Act, and I'm sure we'll probably be talking again. We're certainly not going to stand by and allow the province of Saskatchewan to trample on our inherent rights.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Michelle, certainly appreciate you coming on our show and giving us a few minutes of your time.
Thanks so much, Daryl.
And that was Métis Nation Saskatchewan Vice President Michelle Leclerc. We need to step aside for one more short break. Still ahead, a Franco-Métis musician's newest single honors Métis resistance at Batoche in 1885. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. This was sent in by Glenn Seaton. Glenn didn't mention when this was taken or where, but we guess it's a few weeks ago, and the view sure seems quiet and calm. Thanks for sharing, Glenn. We want to see your photos and hear all about them. Send your photos and info to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, we've got 4 degrees and rain in Charlottetown, 0 degrees in Fredericton, but sunshine there. Kuujjuaq, we've got snow, -5 degrees. Le Grand River, we've got mostly sunny, -9. Val d'Or, you're going to see some sunshine, a little bit of clouds, -2. Montreal, 0 degrees, mostly sunny. Toronto, mix of sun and clouds, 7 degrees there. Sault Ste. Marie, you're going to see some snow, but 7 degrees. Kapuskasing, 0 degrees and snow there. Thunder Bay, mostly sunny, 6 degrees. Churchill, you're going to see a lot of snow there, -6 degrees. Norway House, snowy as well, -4. Gimli, -4 and snowy. And Dauphin, you're going to see some snow as well, -11. Yorkton, also a lot of snow there, -16. Saskatoon, much the same at -15. Stony Rapids, snowy and very brisk at -24. La Ronge, -17, snow there as well. -20 degrees and snow in Fort Chip. Fort McMurray, snow there as well, minus 18. Medicine Hat, minus 14 in snow. Red Deer, snowy there as well, minus 19. Over to BC, we've got minus 9 in Kamloops with snow. Campbell River, mix of snow and rain, 0 degrees. Fort Nelson, you're going to see some sunshine, but minus 21 degrees. Smithers, snowy, minus 9. Rock River, mostly sunny at minus 28. Mayo, minus 17, also mostly sunny there. Yellowknife, minus 28, mostly sunny there. Wrigley, also minus 28, mostly sunny. Paulituck, minus 20, sunshine there. And Nuvik, you're going to see some sun as well at minus 22. Baker Lake, minus 33 and mostly sunny. Whale Cove, minus 35, sunshine there. Clyde River, snowy and minus 28. And Agulik, minus 31, but mostly sunny. She's been a staple of Winnipeg's music scene for decades, in both French and English. Franco-Métis musician Andrina Turenne has been part of a Juno Award-winning band and toured with prolific musicians. Now she's preparing her first solo album. Amelia Fournier has more on her journey.
That's Andrina Turenne playing at Indigenous Day Live in 2019. She has also played across Canada as part of Shit Gamin and toured with Thompson Highway. But for the past 6 years, she's been paving her way as a solo artist. Turenne says her identity has helped shape her into the musician she is today.
I think that music has long been a part of, Métis gatherings and Métis culture, and I feel like there's such a joie de vivre in getting together and in celebrating, and music is just such a wonderful way to do that. It's such a wonderful way to express joy and sorrow and collectively share those emotions together.
She composes and records in her basement studio in Winnipeg's North End.
Bienvenue, c'est Studio Beaver Hut ici. C'est le Beaver Hut, c'est où je crée. Il est temps de tourner la page. It's a very precious guitar to me. My friends crowdfunded this for my 40th birthday, and I had no idea, and I was just blown away. I had wanted a Strat for a long time.
Her latest single, En plein cœur mai, honors Métis resistance at Batoche in 1885. It was released on the anniversary of Louis Riel's execution. Turenne says music was integral to her Franco-Métis upbringing.
Je pense que mes premiers débuts, c'était vraiment familial, puis avec les amis de la famille autour du feu. C'est là que j'ai appris, je pense, à faire des harmonies, puis la joie de la musique, j'ai toujours su que je voulais le faire.
Next year, Turenne plans to release both a bilingual album to reflect her whole identity as a singer-songwriter and a francophone album to add to Manitoba's francophone cultural tapestry.
La raison que j'ai choisi de faire un hippie francophone, c'est que j'ai beaucoup d'amis qui ont des enfants, et puis on sait que c'est un défi quand même de vivre uniquement en français ici. Alors je voulais vraiment créer quelque chose qui permettrait la transmission de la langue, mais aussi la célébration de la langue.
No matter where her music takes her, Turenne says she'll always find her way back home.
Je suis fière d'où je viens, puis des communautés dans lesquelles j'ai grandi. Alors, je pense que je pourrais jamais vraiment séparer l'un de l'autre parce que c'est ça qui m'inspire dans la vie, vraiment. Je tourne à droite et tu tournes à gauche.
Amelia Fournier, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Well, that's all the time we have for your Monday news, but for news anytime, visit our website at aptnnews.ca. I'm Savannah Kelly. Thank you for joining us. Take care and have a good night.